This is a Continuum robot. While it doesn't look like much right now, it's a solution to all the problems that my previous robot has been facing. This was my first prototype in my journey to create a robotic surgical system, and it was big, it was imprecise, it was bulky, and it only worked by plugging in certain angle measurements and the motors moving to that angle. The Continuum robot solves all of these problems. So it works by having two separate springs that I got from my local outdoor supply shop, and they're placed opposite each other in order to create the curve that we want. So basically I 3D printed these pieces in between, and they have different spacing in between them. And the reason that there's different spacing on the top section versus the bottom section is to create the curve that we want. I'll explain that later. One wire runs down from the top all the way to the bottom. Another one runs from this side, this half, all the way to the bottom. And this allows for two different possible functions with these two different wires. One would allow the top part to rotate, the other the bottom part, and together we can create our curve. After researching Continuum robots in detail, I learned that they don't use traditional defined joints like a regular robot. Instead, they use a mechanism in which bending occurs and arbitrary rotation is allowed, and they can rotate into curves we want. This is perfect for our surgical system. So using this, I created my first prototype or kind of test just using paper, tape, and a string. This helped me with the second iteration, in which our first prototype would just be one half of this. So basically this rotation. The second part adds to the curve and creates our arbitrary curve that we want. So as soon as I got the springs, I started up CAD and made this design for the 3D printed parts. I printed exactly 8 of them and spread them across on our prototype. The spacing in between each of these 3D printed parts are what creates the curve that we want. This is why I put different spacing on the top part and the bottom part, because I wanted two different curves, and when added on top of each other they create our arbitrary curve that we want. So potentially, if we want to create any curve, we want to change the spacing in between these. So what are the next steps from here with this test that we have? So from it, I learned what Continuum robots are, how they're used, and specifically, I can envision how it can be used in a surgical system. I think first of all, I'm going to attach it to motors at the end, so I can control the curve using motors and not just pulling the strings by my hand. But the main part of our surgical system is going to be the gripper or the tip, and this would be the hardest part, specifically for my Continuum robot. And thinking of integration for that is definitely my next step in the future. So yeah, that's going to be it for today. Thank you all for watching, and stay tuned.